Today is December 13th. It's the 348th day of the year, and this is the On This Day podcast. And today, listener discretion is advised. It's generally accepted in the West that the Second World War begins in September of 1939, when Germany invades Poland, and in return, France and Great Britain declare war on Germany. But by that point, the war in the Pacific has been in full swing for a year and a half, after Japan invades China in July of 1937, more than 4 years before Japan attacks the U.S. at Pearl Harbor. The 1937 Japanese invasion of China is the start of the Second Sino-Japanese War, which really is the start of World War II. At the beginning of December 1937, the Imperial Japanese Army launches a campaign to take Nanking, the capital of the Republic of China. The battle continues for nearly 2 weeks until this day in 1937, when the capital falls and one of the most horrible episodes of the war begins: the Nanking Massacre, the rape of Nanking. This is really just going to be a brief overview. The Second Sino-Japanese War and the Nanking Massacre are far too complex to do justice in a course of a 10-minute summary, and the brutality inflicted upon the Chinese by the Imperial Japanese Army is far too gruesome to describe in detail. That's not to gloss over the fact that the Japanese commit unspeakable atrocities of mass murder and rape against hundreds of thousands of Chinese civilians and disarmed combatants. They do. And no one is spared. Not the elderly, not children, not even nuns. The numbers are debated still to this day. However, the War Crimes Tribunal later estimates that more than 260,000 non-combatants are murdered in the rape of Nanking that starts on this day in 1937 and continues for the next 6 weeks. And experts will later raise that total to as high as 350,000 people. After its defeat in the First Sino-Japanese War in 1895, China is in flux. They cede Formosa to Japan and are forced to recognize the independence of Korea. Competing forces within China vie for political control. The Chinese Nationalist Party, the KMT, led by Chiang Kai-shek, and the Communist Party of China among them. With China in turmoil in the early 20th century, Japan sees an opportunity to expand its reach and exert imperial authority over the mainland that is ripe with raw materials and valuable resources that are non-existent on the island of Japan. Japan invades Manchuria in 1931 and installs a puppet state led by deposed Emperor Puyi, the last emperor of China. Over the next several years, Chinese resistance fighters battle the Japanese in skirmishes. In July 1937, one of those skirmishes at Marco Polo Bridge in Beijing develops into a full-blown battle that results in the Japanese invasion of China in the Second Sino-Japanese War. The KMT's National Revolutionary Army is the primary body of resistance against the invaders, fighting from the back foot as they retreat across China from Beijing and from a second front in Shanghai. In November 1937, KMT leader Chiang Kai-shek commits to a sustained defense of the capital city of Nanking in hopes of gaining greater leverage in peace talks. The Battle of Nanking begins on December 1st as the Japanese confront the outer defenses of the city. The Chinese manage to slow Japan's offensive thrust over the course of the first week, but day by day, Japan defeats one defensive perimeter after another. It's at this point that Chiang Kai-shek relocates the capital of China to Chongqing, and just in time. On December 10th, Japan breaches the final line of defense and launches an all-out attack on Nanking. And on this day in 1937, after 3 days of mayhem and carnage, Nanking falls, and Japanese forces lure Chinese soldiers out of the city to surrender, only to slaughter them by the thousands. Inside the city, Imperial Japanese Army soldiers brutalize civilians. It is the beginning of the rape of Nanking, on this day in 1937. As author James Scott describes it in his book Target Tokyo, quote, "So vast was the slaughter that dead bodies piled along the banks of the Yangtze turned the mighty river red. As many as 1,000 rapes occurred each night, many of the women killed afterwards to cover up the crime." After the end of the war and the surrender of the Japanese, the capital city is relocated back to Nanking. The war is over, but the fighting continues between the KMT National Revolutionary Army and the communist forces of the People's Liberation Army, who captured Nanking in 1949. The KMT are pushed back by the communists southward through China until they retreat to Taiwan at the end of 1949, after the establishment of the People's Republic of China. There are 18 days left in the year.